Welcome to the Panteva Perspective, Corporate Immigration and Global Mobility.
Welcome back to the Panteva Perspective, Corporate Immigration and Global Mobility with immigration attorney Iskra Panteva. Iskra is the founder of the Panteva Law Group in Chicago, where she helps companies, entrepreneurs, and highly skilled professionals navigate the complexities of U.S. business immigration. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're talking about CAP-exempt H-1B filings, which employers qualify, and how this option can allow companies to hire outside of the annual lottery process. Ms. Iskra, welcome back, my dear.
Thank you for having me, of course.
So, Iskra, what makes that H-1B petition CAP-exempt instead of subject to the annual lottery?
Well, usually you have a standard H-1B petition, and those are allocated for certain amount of numbers. So we have 65,000 petitions that are allowed for people with bachelor degree, and then we have 20,000 master cap petitions that are allowed for people with master's degree from a U.S. non-for-profit institution. So obviously there is a limitation in terms of number of H-1B application that every year an employer can file, or all employers in the United States can file. So based on that limitation, there is a lot of need for the so-called CAP-exempt H-1B petition. And those petitions typically do not count against the 85,000 number that is under the CAP, the standard H-1B under CAP. So usually the exemption is tied with the employer and what kind of employer they are. And that has nothing to do with the employee. So an employer who has CAP-exempt status, for example, can file an H-1B petition for an employee, regardless of their immigration, regardless of their bachelor degree, master's degree, or their H-1B qualifications. That will the CAP-exempt status will be directly related to the employer. And that's when we are looking at different employers that will qualify.
Which employers automatically qualify for that CAP-exempt H-1B sponsorship?
So we are talking about the institution of higher educations, universities, colleges, also research organizations that are affiliated with some colleges and universities, also non-for-profit research organizations, and some government research organizations. So as you can see, they are, they are very limited amount of employers that can qualify, and they are related usually with educational research.
Can organizations qualify for CAP-exempt filings even if they're, not universities or nonprofit institutions?
Yes. Of course, this is one of the paths that have not been commonly known and has not been used commonly. Of course, if an employer is for profit and they are affiliated, they can file a CAP-exempt if the employee works at a qualifying institution. So again, it has to be an employer that is for profit, for example. But if the employee works at this qualifying institution, they will be considered CAP-exempt. So, for example, if the employer is a consulting company and they are placing an employee at a university or a hospital, what happens is they will qualify, those institutions will qualify the employee because of where he will be working. Right. So it's pretty kind of a niche option out there, but it's something that has been used in the past, but not that common. It has not been common.
How does the hiring timeline change when an employer, qualifies for that CAP-exempt H-1B sponsorship?
Well, that's the best part of it, right? Usually in a regular H-1B category, you will have the March lottery. Then you have April to June filing of the petition, and then the employee can start in October, right? So, for example, if somebody calls me right now, I can, the only thing that I can tell them is we can file, we can, go through the process, but the employee that you want to hire right now, or the employee that is with you or is outside of the United States, they can start only in October of 2027. So that's a long period of time. Now, in comparison with the CAP-exempt category, if a university has, for example, a professor that they want to hire on a H-1B visa, they can do that right away. And they don't need to wait for a lottery, for 3 months of filing of the petition, or for the starting of the fiscal year. Basically, they can do it right away. So that's the biggest benefit of those CAP-exempt institutions, right, and employers.
So, Ms. Iskra, can employers hire year-round if they qualify for that CAP-exempt H-1B visa?
Yeah, that's exactly what what that means. A university can hire a researcher in July, and they can onboard them almost right away. A non-for-profit, can onboard somebody in December. So there is no waiting up until the start of the fiscal year. There is no blackout periods where you miss the window, so therefore you have to wait for the next year. It is allowing for faster response. And if the university or the hospital or the college has really urgent hiring needs, they can fulfill them right away.
What does USCIS typically look at when determining whether an employer qualifies for that CAP-exempt status?
Oh, there is a lot of things that they're going to be looking into, especially if those are not big institutions, right? If we're looking at, Northwestern University or University of Chicago Medical Center, those are institutions that are constantly filing visas, and they already have proven time and time again that they qualify as a CAP-exempt employer. However, for some smaller institutions, it's going to be really important to understand what kind of documents they need to put forward in order for them to prove their status. So usually they have to look into accreditation, whether or not they have a tax-exempt status, some organizational documents, and it will depending on how they qualify. Are they affiliated, non-for-profit, um, institution, or are they a university or college? Do they have a worksite exemption? How do they qualify? And based on that, they will need to provide the documents required so they can show that kind of exemption is valid in their situation as well.
So, Ms. Iskra, what happens when an employee working for a CAP-exempt employer later moves to that CAP subject employer?
Well, that's a pretty complicated situation, right? So let's say you have been hired by the University of Chicago, and you have an offer that is in a for-profit organization, right? Let's say that for-profit organization is not CAP exempt, and you need to go through the H-1B transfer. Now, the H-1B transfer is not going to be that simple because to start with, you never participated in the lottery. So now you have to go to the lottery, get selected in the lottery, and then you can transfer your CAP exempt to a regular H-1B application. So pretty complicated. The situation needs to be very the employer, the attorneys, the beneficiaries needs to be aware of the timing. They need to be aware that, they will be, if they're trying to transfer, the employee will need to be subject to this October 1st starting time, right? So, it's going to be very difficult if, for example, in December, somebody finds a job at a organization that is subject to CAP, and they want to start right away. That's not going to be possible, right? One caveat there is if they decide to do that on as a simultaneous job. So if they are working, if this is a second job, they are still allowed to work as on a CAP subject institution, but only on a part-time basis or as a second employer. So that's the only exception there. But if they just want to transfer from one employer to another, then they need to go through the CAP.
Ms. Iskra, can you share an example of a situation where CAP-exempt filings gave an employer more flexibility than the standard H-1B process?
Well, of course, the things are much easier for institutions such as universities, hospitals, and research organizations. And the reason why is because they are free to hire at any time. They're free to sponsor at any time. So this is always a big advantage in comparison with other employers. And that can always give them kind of a advantage on the recruitment side. As we discussed, if you have a regular CAP, you have to wait until October 1st. CAP exempt, they can file at any time immediately. So this happens a lot for, it's a big advantage for those institutions, especially when you have, for example, universities, they have grants that have been given to them by the government or by some private institutions, and they need to hire researchers right away, right? In this situation, they can start recruiting, they can start hiring immediately. And that's basically the bottom line on this CAP-exempt H-1B category. It is created with the narrow exception there of people that are working in education, people that are working in research, that will help, in a lot of ways, the U.S. to advance its technological, achievements and progress.
What assumptions do employers make about this CAP-exempt H-1B eligibility that often turn out to be wrong?
Yeah, that's we can talk a little bit more about this because we have a lot of different misconceptions that come out. It is a difficult subject a lot of times, and a lot of times it comes up with a lot of misunderstanding. So, a lot of employers think that, oh, if we are a non-for-profit organization, then we will qualify. Obviously, that's not correct. If you're a non-for-profit organization, you have to be affiliated with a college or university. Um, another thing that can a lot of times I hear through our consultations is, oh, we are talking with this university, or we are having a project with that university. We partner with them. Does that mean that we are affiliated? Obviously, that's not the case, right? You have to have, just because you are partnering with university or you have some kind of a relationship, business relationship with them, it doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to be CAP exempt. You need to have an affiliation that is meaningful, that is documented, and that will be very highly scrutinized by USCIS. The other thing that we hear, not that often, but I have seen it a lot, is once we qualify, we always qualify. That's not how it works. If you have to prove your qualifications every time you file an H-1B petition. So things change if you lose your accreditation, if you change your mission, you have a restructuring. Those things can definitely affect the CAP-exempt CAP-exempt status. So the universities, the hospitals, anybody that falls under this category will need to make sure that they maintain this CAP-exempt status in order for them to be able to serve their employees population, in a very flexible manner, the way that the CAP-exempt category will allow them. But yeah, those are Definitely complicated questions. We always, advise, talk with an attorney, discuss this. It can be really problematic to be able to start the process, give kind of false hopes to the employee if you have not enough documents to support that CAP-exempt status. So definitely, you need to consult an attorney and make sure that you will fall under that category.
That's good stuff, Ms. Iskra. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's it for today's episode of the Panteva Perspective, Corporate Immigration and Global Mobility. To learn more about Iskra Panteva and the work she does with employment-based immigration, visit panteva.com. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave a review if you found this episode helpful as well. And we'll see you all next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.